The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, we had some technical difficulties, and evidently you weren't able to hear me, so I'm going to go back to the very beginning of the program, and I'm going to start again. I do thank you for the messages, so evidently you weren't able to hear me, so I am going to go back to the beginning of our presentation. And so again, it's important to realize that people do things for their own reasons. I was a mother of teenagers, which is why I named this. Have you ever tried to motivate a teenager? It's impossible to motivate people who don't want to be motivated. And the one thing I hear from everybody is that they know their people could do more, but they don't. And yes, everybody that works for you could do more. Everybody could achieve more. You yourself could achieve more. So it's not a matter of can you, it's will you. And people will not be motivated because you want to have a record year or you want to have a record month. People are only motivated if it's something that ties into the goal, something to them personal. You know, I had my best months when I had 3 young girls in their 20s want to buy a condo in downtown Chicago. And I said, do you have any idea what that's going to cost you? And they said, no. And I said, you know what? I'm going to give you the afternoon off. I want you to go. I want you to go to some of the leasing offices of the condos around here. I want you to figure out what you need as a down payment, what you'd have to earn, and then come back to me and let's work out a plan. And 2 of the 3 did it. They had their best years ever, and then they had to furnish the apartment and do all kinds of things. For me, I didn't have to motivate them at all because they were motivated by themselves. But again, people are only motivated if it's something that means something to them. So is it something that they're trying to achieve for themselves, their family, their financial freedom? You know, your more mature employees are worried about retirement. Your younger people are worried about, can I get a home? Can I get a car? You know, what about the quality of life? You know, what trips can you take? What other things can you do for yourself and your family? There's no limit on how much you can earn in our profession, but also there's no limit on how little you can earn. There are many people that earn minimum wage that work in this profession, and most people fail. You know, when you look at the turnover rate in the staffing and recruiting profession, there are more people that fail than succeed. And that makes me sad. The other thing that makes me sad, because I train in 17 countries. And so I've had, you know, the experience of going out to other countries and listening to what's going on and watching what goes on. And the interesting thing is that only 10% of the people in our profession ever become a high achiever, ever become a top producer. Most people remain average. You know, an average in our industry right now is anybody that's producing less than 300,000 in direct placement is considered average. Anybody who has been in the contract staffing business, who has had residual income coming in, and if they're not generating at least $1 million in gross sales, they're considered average. And so you look at those numbers and you think, okay, so how do I get people to realize that? You know, how do I get the people that are working for me to not end up making minimum wage, to not turn over? You know, and when you hire somebody, you know, it's a very expensive endeavor for you because you're training, you're doing all kinds of things. And I believe that expectations have to be realistic. We bring people in our office and actually watch the job being done. And the reason we do that is because when somebody hears about the job, it's much different than seeing it be done. You know, we have a 4-step interviewing process where they interview with a manager, they interview with me, they interview with, you know, members of our team. You know, we give them a job description. We do all kinds of things to make sure they understand the job. And the last step is to spend 3 hours in our office. And I can tell you out of every 3 people we do this to, 1, after 20 minutes of observing the team making calls, will come in and say, how long do I have to do that before I don't have to do that? You know, and again, at conferences, people come up to me all the time and say, I can't believe that my owner wants me to be on the phone. You know, well, we have to form relationships, and yes, we text, and yes, we email. But at a recent technology conference, I learned that 82% of all emails are not even open. And so bringing them in and letting them see the job being done takes the mystery out of it. And the second, then if people watch for 45 minutes and they don't come in and say, how long do I have to do that before I don't have to do that, we give them a script, we give them a Gmail account, we give them a list of people to call, and we say, all we want you to do is get someone to send you a resume or CV. And they go, okay. And so we give them the script and the Gmail account, and we tell them, by the way, if anybody gives us a resume or CV and we end up placing them in a job, we are going to absolutely pay you $500 whether we hire you or not, because we don't want to take advantage of people, and we have paid that out. But I can tell you that out of the two people that we then have make the calls, one is either way too social, explaining everything they're doing with the whole entire audience, with the whole entire staff, very disruptive, or sometimes they're so uncomfortable, they're too analytical, they barely make any calls. And you could tell the phone fear is there. Unfortunately, that socialness, that phone fear usually is not determined until after you've hired them, you bring them on board, and now you've got money invested in them. And owner to owner, for me, I always have owners say, how much do I invest in a new hire? I don't know. What kind of budget do you have for a new hire? With me, it's $8,000. If I've invested $8,000 in a new hire and they're not making sales, I'm not seeing a return on the investment, that person's on probation. And I even tell new hires that what I do is I will bring you in, we'll put you through a step-by-step training program, we will mentor you, we'll guide you, you're going to take notes every day on what you've learned, we're going to test you every 5 days to make sure that you're comprehending what we're teaching you. We're going to have you only recruit on our hot orders to give you the best chance of success, but we need to see results. And so we start putting minimum standards really quickly, because so often people don't know what you expect, and then as an owner you get flustered because they're not doing what you want them to do, and half the time they don't know what you want them to do, especially if you're hiring people with no experience. And another thing I want to say to all of you is only hire people that want to sell and that realize a lot of sales is done on the phone. Don't put this out as a consulting job. Let them know that this is sales. We do a lot of our sales on the phone, that they're going to be on the phone, they're going to be reaching out to people, that we make warm, informed calls because of all the information on the internet. But people have to realize this is a sales job. It's too expensive of an investment for you to hire people that don't want to be sold. Now, most recruiters are motivated by instant gratification. I used to laugh in my office. I could put all kinds of bonuses and contests, but if I offered somebody free lunch, or here's a $50 bill for anybody that does X amount, or if you do this today, you can leave at 4. It's amazing. They can earn thousands of dollars from their production, but if you offer to pay for a lunch, it's amazing the extra effort that people would put forth. And you always want to run contests and do motivating things where it means something to your employees. When my team was a little bit younger, if we hit our goals, we went out for the evening, and they could pick the place of their choice, any restaurant they wanted to go to, and we'd go to some of the best restaurants in Chicago. Sometimes we did the boats, on Lake Michigan. We did all kinds of things. As my team started getting a little bit older and having children and that, they didn't want to spend evenings with their coworkers. I had some people that wanted to do that, so we did that for some of our team. Other members would have rather got a Friday afternoon off or a day off to spend with their kids, or be able to work flexible hours in the summer where they could have an extra day off. They were still working, but they could spend more time with their children. So look at your team. And again, what motivates you is not going to necessarily motivate anybody else. If you have members of your team who are only working to pay their bills, that's tough. Have them figure out something small that they're going to do for themselves if they hit their goal. Self-gratification is a great motivator. Maybe it's just buying a pair of shoes, or going for a manicure, pedicure, or attending a sporting event. If they hit their goals, they should reward themselves. And you should ask your team, okay, if you hit your goals this month, what are you going to do for yourself? And then you make sure that they do it, because people that work for us are really social workers who like money. That's who people in the staffing and recruiting profession are. We're social workers who like money. And so you've got to make sure that they don't take care of everybody else and not themselves. They've got to be doing, something for themselves if they're going to hit their goals every single month. I want to give you some motivating tips now, very specific tips that are going to help you create that motivating environment, okay? Have systems and processes in place that touch your candidate and client database on a bi-monthly basis. And the reason you want to do that is because you can't depend on your team to constantly every month be reaching out and keeping your database current, either your candidate or client database. And you want your candidates and clients to also get something from you, the owner, you, the manager. You don't want the loyalty of your clients and your candidates to only be to the recruiter they're working with. And so every other month, what we do is we send an article of interest to all of our clients, articles that we know they're going to want to read, and then attached to that is a list of our most placeable candidates. And it's amazing how often our clients will forward that article and list to one of their business associates, and we get a call from a person we've never reached out to, and now we have a new client. It's the same thing with candidates. We give them an article of interest, like how do you negotiate the best raise. You know they're going to open that. And then we give them a list of some of the openings we have right now. And it's the same thing. When people get a list of jobs, they'll share that with others. And you will always, when you do this, you will always generate more candidates. And what this guarantees for you as the owner or manager, okay, what you're trying to do is you're trying to create a motivating environment that's going to increase your profits. Your recruiters get very, very busy. And there are times when a month or two can go by and they're not even touching your best clients, you know, or they're not keeping in touch with your best candidates. And so as the owner or manager, you have to have things in place. Autoresponders are very good for this. You know, you could set up a series of autoresponders that people get. We have 81 different series in the 3 companies that I own that are just automatic things that happen whether a human being does something or not. Often I'm at a conference and I'm speaking on the podium and somebody in the audience go, I just got an email from you. And they're kind of laughing and I go, well, it's an autoresponder. It's something I set up that you're going to get once every, 17 days or once every 34 days. And they go, God, that's awesome. You've also got to reward effort. We have a tendency of rewarding our top producers. If you've got somebody who is struggling and they made a great recruiting call, they made a great marketing presentation, or they booked, 2 or 3 interviews on a very hard to fill position, you want to reward their effort. You don't only want to reward people when they're producing for you. Reward the effort, let them see you're watching their efforts, and that will end up being production. I always had a drawer fulfilled with theater coupons, Starbucks coupons, $10 Visa cards, all kinds of things, small things. And sometimes I would do things like dinner for 4 or, theater tickets for 4. If I know that, this person has a family, and you give this and they go home and share it with their family. And if they stop getting things, they're like, what's going on at work? Why haven't you gotten this lately? So their family starts motivating them for you as well. It doesn't have to be big things, but reward effort because that leads to production. Have contests that can be won by everybody. Like anybody that books 20 send-outs this month is going to get whatever. Anybody that does this is going to get whatever. Look at where you need attention. Do you need new clients? Do you need more interviews booked? Do you need better orders? Do you need more candidates? Wherever you need, more attention, that's where you put your contest. Because where you put your contest, believe me, is where your team is going to focus. And also, only you know what needs attention. You know what needs attention in your office. So watch the order flow, watch the number of send-outs. To me, the most important number I watch as an owner is I just want to know how many first interviews are booked. To me, a send-out is an interview between a candidate and a client. I don't care if it's Skype, face-to-face, phone, it's first interviews. If you want your sales to increase in your business, just consistently increase the number of first interviews because everyone that works for you has their individual stats. And nothing happens unless people get in front of hiring authorities. That's everybody's job. And when I'm presenting the job to people, I am saying, by the way, your job is to make sure that we get candidates in front of our clients. That's everybody's job here is to make sure that every day we're getting more people in front of hiring authorities. Hold kickoff meetings. Let people know, what you have that's hot, what has to be covered, and hold wrap-up meetings. Discuss the sales that are pending. Wrap it up and say, we really need more coverage here. And by the way, in today's competitive marketplace, there is a formula that works. And whenever I give this formula out, people think I'm bad at math, and I'm actually very good at math. But the formula is 3 plus 3 equals 3, okay? And I know that makes absolutely no sense to most of you, but let me explain a little bit further. 3 candidates on final interviews and 3 opportunities for every candidate ends up in closing 3 deals. What's happening, technology has changed everything. You and I know that. And we might have 3 candidates at the beginning, and then by the time we get to the second interview, we're down to 2, and by the time we get to the final interview, we're down to 1. And you and I both know more people are taking counteroffers, and all kinds of nonsense goes on. So your goal and the goal of everybody that works for you should be 3 people in final interviews. You got to backfill. Now, if you're working a VMS situation, obviously you can't do that, or you're working retained search. You can't necessarily do that. But everything else, you want to back up and have 2 to 3 people in final interviews. So if an offer is given and rejected for any reason, you got candidate number 2 and 3. You don't start at the beginning. So when you're holding these kickoff and wrap-up meetings, you're making sure that people are backfilling, that you've got 2 to 3 people going in final interviews. On the other side of this, the 3 plus 3 equals 3, If you don't send candidates on more than one job, they will find interviews on their own. They will go, they'll reach out to their network. They're going to reach out on social media. They're going to start looking at job boards. They're going to look at website postings. If you only send somebody on one interview, believe me, they are going to find interviews on their own. Because even if they were a recruited candidate that wasn't in a job search, once you start them in a job search, they're going to want to see more than one thing. So the minute you book an interview, now obviously if you're doing retained search, you can't do this, but everybody else can. The minute you book an interview, you want to market them to the companies they want to work for, and you want to book 2 or 3 other interviews for them. And so these wrap-up meetings and sales pending and kickoff meetings, you're also asking, do we have our candidates on 2 or 3 interviews? Do we have 3 people going into final? You've got to keep backfilling candidates. And by the way, I've been close to an offer, and I've called a client and said, you know what? The perfect person that you're probably going to hire was sitting at my desk today. And I hesitated calling you because we're in final interviews, and I'm worried we're going to lose everybody else. Is there any way that we can combine processes so we don't lose the people that are pending, but you just got to see this person? Because I just think your company's name's written across their forehead, and your client will combine interviews, and they will be so grateful that you cared enough about them that even though you were close to a hire, you presented an additional candidate. You've got to offer training on a consistent basis. Our people are no different than any other type of company, and I always find it interesting that when you look at your P&L, very few staffing and recruiting firms have a line item for training, and yet it's training that makes your recruiters better. Most recruiters, 95% of the recruiters in our profession are average or below average. Only 5% attain top production, and the ones that do are consistently being trained. They're consistently being given new techniques that show them what to do. You also want to individualize contests. I've actually paid for people's baby showers and wedding showers and all kinds of things. Anybody can come up to me at any moment in time once a year and give me an individual challenge. And their individual challenge that in the next 90 days, if I double my normal production, would you be willing to run a contest where I could earn X amount of dollars, where it would pay for, a shower or whatever? Let me tell you something. If somebody's going to double what they normally do in a 90-day period, what they don't realize is when they up their stats and they up their habits to double their income, it doesn't stop after 90 days. And what I watch is that the increased production and increased profits I'm going to get as an owner, I'm never going to spend more than 30% of that when I'm talking about this additional contest I'm going to do for them. I do that kind of as my guideline where I'm still making a profit. And I'm telling you, the 90 days after that, they're still gunning it. And often it gets them to a whole new level just by them giving you an individual contest. So think about that, because it really is motivating for them to think they can come up to you and tell you what they need. Really streamline your reports, and don't ask for reports that you're not going to read and react to. If you ask me for something and you don't read it and you don't give me feedback, I'm never going to fill it out again. And I have recruiters tell me all the time, our owners ask for these things. They never read them. They never anything. And it's a joke. And so as a result, we quit doing it, and nobody even asked us where the report was. So you never want to ask for something you don't react to. Provide group rewards where goals are achieved. I believe that if our office hits a goal, I'm going to reward everybody. I'm going to reward the receptionist, my accounting department. I'm going to do other things, because bonusing your front desk person or your bookkeeper goes a long way. Your front desk person is the first impression of your entire business. And their mood when your people walk in, that usually is the only sane person in the office is your front desk person, because they're not in sales. And so you need a very happy, even-tempered person at that front desk. And if they know that they're going to be bonused if the team hits goals, because it's hard for them to be the only person that's not earning commissions and bonuses and incentives. And yet everybody, it's tough to work in an office where you're the only non-salesperson. But if they see that there's something in it for them, they'll put up with your salespeople more, and they'll stay after 5. They'll do certain things to try to back your sales team because they want their bonus too. And so think about, this is your director of first impressions. Why not bonus them, or your bookkeeper? If your bookkeeper is shortening, your accounts receivable and doing a great job, you've got to bonus the other people that work for you. You need repeatable systems throughout the entire placement process. I don't know if any of you really know much about me, but I went into this profession over 30 years ago, never having worked at one. I went to employment firms. I didn't like the way I was treated. And so without even any experience working at a recruiting firm, I opened Sunshine Employment. And I opened Sunshine Employment to put sunshine in the lives of the people I represented because I didn't like the way I was treated. And it was interesting because I thought we put unemployed people to work. I didn't realize that most of our clients want to hire people that are working and now they're making their next career move. So I had this unbelievable learning curve. And after 10 months, I was a single mom. I almost lost my house. I did double mortgage my house because I didn't know what I was doing. And then I realized, wait a minute, there has to be a process. So I went to conferences and I tried to seek out people that were very successful and ask them what were their repeatable processes. And then over the years, I've refined it because now I know what you have to do. I know the steps in client development. I know what steps it takes to really make somebody, a stellar recruiter. But you have to have processes. Think of your business like a franchise. If a recruiter's not there, anybody should be able to sit down at their desk and work their desk. Anybody should be able to. You can't have everybody doing it a different way because you can't grow your company. You can't grow your company and the value of your company goes way down if you don't have systems in place. So think of everything you do. There should be a referral system. You should have a client and a candidate referral process. There is a definite process, like we contact clients 6 times in the first 9 weeks, a new prospect, doing all kinds of different things just so we have name recognition. So there has to be a process for everything you do. You have to have follow-up systems. This is where most firms do a terrible job. We do a great job trying to get their business, but when it comes to following up with clients and candidates, and 50% of my speaking is in front of RN users, and they complain about this all the time. Boy, when there's problems, you guys disappear. Nobody ever calls me to see how their person is doing. You also, as an owner or manager, need to close your open door policy and set specific times for interruptions. I can be interrupted in the morning, midday, and at the end of the day, unless it's a close. If it's a close that's going south, you can interrupt me. I don't care what I'm doing. But other than that, because the people that talk to you the most are your lowest producers, it's easier to talk to you than it is to stay on the phone. You want to segment your day and the days of the people working for you. Do recruiting blitzes. Have certain things done at certain times of the day where there's that synergy that's going on in your organization. You also should control when emails are answered. Unless you're working a fast-paced temporary desk where you have to answer emails. We answer emails 3 times a day, in the morning, lunch, and at the end of the day. And we show our candidates how that benefits them and our clients how it benefits them. If you want your team to take their goals seriously, tie in some kind of consequences. If they don't hit their goals, what does it cost them? What do they give up? We announce goals at the beginning of every month, and we tell people that if Susan hits her goal, she's going to do this. If Jeff hits his goal, he's going to do that. But this is what they're going to give up. And they give up crazy things like drinking Diet Coke, or they give up, Snapchat, or they give up whatever. And it's something, I give up Chinese food because I love Chinese food. And I'm telling you, if I ever give up Chinese food, my office would bring it in 15 times that month because they were laughing because I couldn't order. I couldn't be part of it. But tie in a fun consequence. You don't think you can hold people accountable. Of course you can. Your life is on the line. You're an owner or manager. You're being judged on the success of other people, and make it a fun consequence. But everybody knows what the consequence is. And let me tell you something. I might not get Chinese food 1 month, but by the next month, I'm doing whatever it takes to hit my goal because I don't want not to have that for 2 months. And that's the kind of fun thing you want to do. You've got to create an environment where failure is not fatal. You don't judge a person's success by the number of their successes, but rather on how they overcome failures. Successful people fail more. And I think that's really important for all of you to realize. If you really want to be a success, you got to fail more. Because successful people fail more because they try more. When you hire an overachiever, they're going to want to try more. They're going to be more creative, and they're going to make more mistakes. But if they're empowered to make decisions and mistakes, the end result will be increased profits for you. And so, failure can't be fatal. And you've also got to constantly recognize and applaud achievement. The recruiting profession is sales. There is so much emphasis placed on personal production. But too often, we're only rewarding placements. You've got to recognize efforts. You've got to recognize, wins, small wins. It could be something very simple that a person has done that they've been struggling with. It could be that finally they're overcoming 3 objections with every phone call. That's an interesting point, too. At every conference I've been at this year, I've asked them to let me do a session on overcoming objections. And by the third objection, I have everybody stand up and I start throwing out common objections. And by the third objection, at every single conference, I've had 100% of the people sit down because they can't overcome objections. And these are simple things like, I don't use recruiting firms, your fees are too high, we've already got 3 sources we're using, and it gets whole audiences to sit down. Your people are hearing those things every single day. They can't be good at overcoming objections, they've got to be great. And so maybe all of a sudden you hear them overcoming 2 or 3 objections with every phone call. You got to reward that because that's something they have to be great at. Lastly, I want to give you 8 strategies that will increase your profits, because not only was this call about, creating a motivating environment, you're in business to make profits, not to provide jobs for the people that work for you. When companies go out of business, almost always the owner has maintained salespeople that weren't making the money. Sometimes the owner doesn't take a paycheck, and yet they're paying people that are not making the money, not adding to the bottom line. You can't do that, because you jeopardize everybody else that's working for you and performing. So let's talk about strategies to increase your profit. Always review your expenses. And I want to share a story with you. I used the same printer for 20 years. In fact, it was closer to 25 years because I had my office in Chicago for 26 years. And 25 of those years, I had the same printer. And because I'm a speaker, we use a printer a lot, okay? And so when I moved my offices to Indiana by my home, okay, I was looking for a new printer, and my printer called me and said, I don't want to lose your business. And I said, the problem is I can get printers in Indiana. I'm getting quotes that are like half of what your quotes are. And plus, they can deliver things to me within 24 hours, so I've got that immediate attention. And seriously, the bids are half of what you were charging me. And what my printer said to me was, I'll meet those prices. And so he thought that he was doing me a favor. I was so upset because obviously he wasn't going to do it at a loss. And he could bill me half of what he was normally billing me and still make a profit. And he was going to deliver things from Chicago to Crown Point, Indiana. And when I found that out, I instantly said, we're done. And I said, because all that tells me is you've been overcharging me for 2 decades. And so I'm not impressed. And I usually have my receptionist go through all our vendors, our internet, our phones, all kinds of things. It was interesting, and what I do is I reward the front desk person. Any savings that you can get for me, any savings, I will pay you 10% of what I save in the next year as a bonus for you. And one time, I remember we went from DLS lines to 2T1 lines in our office, and the lines were faster, they were better, and my receptionist saved us like well over $12,000. And so, of course, 10% of that was $1,200. And I had other owners going, you gave your receptionist $1,200? I go, she saved me $12,000. Of course I did. So it's good to give this project to somebody who's more detail-oriented, your accounting person, your front desk person. But every year you need to review all your expenses and look where you can save. Your temp and contract quotes, make sure that you never end quotes at 0 or 5. If you're doing temp and contract, we have a tendency of rounding numbers up. If you just, instead of a 5, make the number 9 on your bill rate, and instead of making the number 9 on the pay rate, make it 1, that 8-cent, 9-cent spread goes right to your bottom line. And people think that you made a better quote. They think you made a better quote because it wasn't an exact round number. 3, direct placement fees. If you're asked for a reduced fee, don't count by 5s. It kills me when somebody has a 25% fee and they're asked to reduce the fee and they instantly go to 20%. And they go, well, I'll reduce the fee by 5% to 20%. That's not a 5% reduction. That's a 20% reduction. 25% was 100% of your fee. If you go to 20%, you've reduced your fee by 20%, you've reduced your profits by 20%, your recruiters have reduced their commission by 20%. They have to realize that. They have to learn to count by ones, and we don't reduce our fees other than for volume hires. We'll reduce every 3rd placement, $2,500. And we do that because that's very appealing for people to do multiple hires through us. You've got to look at your average fees. Our average fees are $25,000. So we're basically reducing our fee by, 10%. Every 3rd fee is reduced by 10% or $2,500. But $2,500 sounds like more than 10%. So when we say every third placement you make with us will reduce by $2,500, they want to hire multiple people from us. But teach your team to count by ones, not by fives. Conduct a weekly review and have everybody that works for you do this. Every single Friday, I want you, when you get off this phone, to mark off 30 minutes on your calendar and have everybody that works for you do the same thing. And you're going to ask yourself 3 questions during this weekly review. The first question is, what did I do right this week? And so you look at the 20% that gave you 80% of your results, and you have everybody that works for you do this. And the second question is, how did I waste my time this week? You waste time when you take incoming calls from candidates you're never going to place. You waste time. We place less than 5% of the people that come to us. When the other 95% say, can I call you? You have to say, no, but let me give you something to do. If you give them advice, they will keep calling you. And the people that call you the most are the people you'll never place in jobs. And the average recruiter spends 90 minutes a day talking to candidates they're never going to place. That's the average, because we've had companies track it. And so that has to stop. You know, arriving at work with no plan, that's a waste of time. So whatever you determine is wasting your time, you make a promise to yourself to stop those things today. And then you think about the one idea you're trying to change that month. Every month, everybody, including yourself, should be implementing one habit, one new good habit, to do away with an old bad habit. And if you do that, imagine if you do it the rest of this year, you'll have 7 new habits that you implement from now to the end of the year. What impact could that have on your profit margin and on the people that work for you? Now, if you still work a desk, if you're an owner manager that works a desk, you're going to do 2 reviews. You're going to do one review of your desk, your own production. What did I do right? How did I waste time? What idea am I doing? Then you stand back as the owner or manager and look at your whole entire office. What did my office do right? How are we all wasting time? You know, and if you do this, you might have a bad week. You might have a bad 2 weeks. You're never going to have a bad month. Nobody's going to blank, because every Friday you're reviewing and you're looking at what you did, which is very important. You want to set minimum standards. You know, write down your expectations and minimum standards, and you've got to share them with the people that work for you. You can't say you're not meeting my expectations if nobody has minimum standards. And the only way you can have minimum standards is to know and manage by numbers. You've got to know the ratios for every person that works for you. Earlier I gave you the most important ones, but you have to manage by numbers. If you don't manage by numbers, you can never tell somebody specifically what to do to turn around a slump. You know, there's certain results every person that works for you needs to do every single day. And I'm not talking if they want to produce 20,000, they have to produce 1,000 a day. I'm not talking that. I'm talking about, say that I do office clerical placement, and I want to place a secretary in a job every week. And I know I have to get 5 people on interviews. My send out to hire ratio is 5 to 1. So I know I have to book 5 send outs every week if I'm going to make a placement every week. I know that's my number. Well, what if then I have to figure out how many interviews do I have to do to book a send out, and I realize it's 3. So my daily standard is I've got to do 3 interviews, because if I do 3 interviews, I'll book a send out. If I book a send out every day, every week, I'm going to make a placement a week. Well, if I want to do 3 interviews a day, how many calls do I make? How many recruiting calls do I make? I do enough to book 5 interviews a day, because you and I both know somebody's going to no-show, somebody's going to cancel, and I need to do 3 interviews a day. So if I did 3 yesterday and I did 2 today, I've got to do 4 tomorrow, because at the end of the week, I need to do 15 interviews, book 5 send-outs, and I'll make a sale. That's how you have to manage. You've got to know those numbers for every person that works for you. Every person that works for you needs to know their numbers, and you need to know their numbers. You want to provide comprehensive and consistent training, because the answer to, I'm not hitting my goals, the answer that most managers or owners give is make more calls. But if they're not making good calls and you tell them to make more calls, they're going to get the same result, 0. If I've made 50 marketing calls and I didn't write a job order, contract, or assignment, something's wrong with my calls, or something's wrong with the targets, or I'm not overcoming objections. I mean, something is wrong. And so you've got to listen and you've got to train. And the best way to train is role playing with your people. You know, knowing where the weaknesses are, and determining, and then providing training for them. And then once they've got the training, then role play with them. And lastly, you can't hire a duck and expect that person to be an eagle. You know, so often you hire people that are average, and you tell them they can earn 100 grand a year, and the most they've ever earned is $20,000. They can't even imagine earning 100,000. And when you ask them, where do you want to go? Where do you want to live? Everybody has a different financial thermostat, but you can't hire a duck and expect them to be an eagle. I did training once. I did a webinar not knowing my team was on the phone because I was out of town. And I said, I've got a couple ducks and they do very well. And I go, they make me money. They don't want to be an eagle. If you hire some ducks, those are consistent producers that are making you money, but they're never going to be that big biller. They're never going to want to pay the price because they've got to work evenings. They've got to be very niche. They've got to be, really focused. Big billers, there's DNA to a big biller. If you want someone to become a big biller, you've got to hire somebody who is a top producer. I'm not saying in our profession, but if you find an overachiever in real estate, they're going to overachieve in this profession. If you find an overachiever who's selling copiers. One of my best hires ever was a girl sold me a copier that I didn't need. And when she walked out the door, I'm like, why in God's name did I just spend $4,500 on a copier I didn't need? She had me believing that if I didn't invest in this Minolta copier, my image, and it was ridiculous. And I bought the copier. And so I went after her, and I did hire her. And she turned out to be the fastest top producer I'd ever hired. But we had to tone her down. She was used to one call, one close. Anytime outside salespeople calling you, see them. Because a lot of times people don't think they can earn that money inside. If they say, if you say, how do you like outside sales? And if they go, I hate it, but it's the only place I can make money, that's a person you go after. Some of them say, well, I love the flexibility. I can finish my day by 1 o'clock and go to a matinee. That's why there's matinees in the theaters. That's not a person you're going to hire. But you've got to hire people that want to sell, that have a track record of high performance. If you're hiring recent grads, you want them to have worked through school. You want them to have sold something, or you want them to have been a competitor on a team and they were playing. They weren't on the bench. You don't just want somebody that has this great grade point average that's never worked and never done anything other than get good grades. Ex-athletes do great in our profession. I find that people that are working in hotels, sales and marketing people in hotels make great recruiters. I run into enterprise rent-a-car people all the time. They leave enterprise and come to our profession. Enterprise has one of the best training programs out there. When you need somebody, recruit them. We tell our clients not to run ads, and it drives me nuts when I see recruiting firms running ads when they're trying to hire their internal team. We're recruiters. Go out and recruit them. If you follow my advice, you're going to create a motivating environment that will increase your profits. Now, I also wanted to mention something else to you. I don't want you to try to do everything I just gave you. Hopefully you'll pick 1, 2, or 3 ideas and implement one this month, one next month, and one the following month. I used to attend things and then try to implement everything. What is the one thing I said that resonated with you where you just went, oh, I've got to do that? Then that's the thing you do first. And do the new idea for 21 working days consistently until it becomes a habit, and then go to your next idea. Also, if you don't have a comprehensive training program, I developed a tutor. And the reason I did this online is because most people don't want their people to leave the office. They don't want their people to have to, travel to a conference and the expense of the hotel and flight and everything. So I did a brain dump. I took everything I learned and put it online. And so if you would like to see a demo of our training program, and it absolutely it's all the processes, all the systems, all the scripts, every objection your people are going to get and how to overcome it. There's everything involved, that your people need to learn on both the client development side as well as the recruiting side. And if anybody calls for a bonus and invests by the end of April, what you will get is my strategic management tutor free. That's a 26-week program showing you how to manage, showing you how to be a stronger sales manager. So if any of you would like to see a demo, please write down this number. What I gave you today is probably not even 5% of what's in our tutor program for owners and managers. Every habit, every system, everything I've taught you here, how to set up a referral program for candidates, how to set up a client referral program, everything I have mentioned on this call, we've got detailed training in our program. And so hopefully you got enough from this call where you don't have to invest in my program. But if you don't have a comprehensive, consistent program, it takes training off your desk. Training is not the best time for most owners. I used to only hire outside of spring and fall, because spring and fall I do conferences. So I would never hire in spring and fall because I didn't have time to train. And so if any of you are interested in our tutor, please call, and we'll also give you 5 seats free. So you can put 5 of your people through the program once you invest. And I'm telling you what, you have nothing to lose and everything to gain by calling for a demo. If you don't even want to buy, look at our program and see what we're doing. We'll give you the outlines and everything and develop something on your own. I think, I don't mind if you do that, but I think you'll really be surprised at how comprehensive this program is. Now I want to take any questions that you have. You can ask me questions one of 2 ways. If you put the number in, the PIN of the conference line, you can go to the little hand icon toward the top of the bar on the right and click on that. I can unmute your lines and you and I can talk. Or if you have a question, you can go down to the bottom. Let's see here. How long is your demo? The demo takes 30 minutes, maybe 20, 30 minutes, and we don't demo it for you. We give you a login and password and let you click around, because none of us could sit still for 20 or 30 minutes and listen to somebody talk. I know when people try to demo me, I can't do it. I don't have the attention span. So it takes 20 or 30 minutes. Can you give us any stats on results? Yes, 100% of the people that own my tutor have increased sales and profits. And we've got 25,000 people we've put through these programs, and we update them weekly. There's also training for you. The first week of every month is owner manager. The second coaching call of every month is owner manager. And you're on the phones with owners and managers from all over the world asking me questions. And so you not only learn from me, you learn from the questions other people are asking me, because sometimes you don't know what to ask. There's so many new things out there. And now that I'm training for LinkedIn, I've got their data as well. And I share everything I learn. Anything I learn, I share with you. Because as you know, I've got the advantage of, yes, I own my own firm, but I do in-house training with some of the best companies in the country. I address 20 or 30 conferences a year, and I train for LinkedIn Learning. I've got all their numbers and know what's going on. So I share everything with my training clients. And so again, please write this number down. And I will be sending, by the way, I will be sending a copy of this program to all of you, because I know there's a lot of information on this, and I don't want, you probably have writer's cramp, so I am recording this, and I will send a copy of this recording to all of you after the call is done, anybody that registered for the call, because I see that's another question. Can you train in a niche? I do not do niche training. Like, we will train them. I cannot train your people on your ATS, because there's 117, I think, ATS systems right now. So you've got to train them on whatever CRM or ATS you're using, and I can't train a niche, because there's so many different niches. But I can tell you, we've trained people in every niche through my tutor, and everyone's been successful. And so, we do not have any problem. That's all you have to train now. And then not only do we do a training program for your people, they've got calls weekly as long as they work for you. Live calls with me weekly and coaching calls twice a month. As long as they work for you, they can log on once they're in the program. And so, and once you invest in our program, it's $50 to put a person through the program. And so when you think about that, they've got training for the rest of their career. I can become your weekly training meeting. And I do all these calls live because I want to answer questions. Let's see. What niches have you worked in? It's interesting because I've worked in hospitality, obviously office support and legal. Currently, my firm does high-level talent acquisition professionals, but probably 60% of my training is IT and engineering, because I wrote a certification program for Tech Serve Alliance. They came to me to write best practices for IT and engineering professionals. I wrote that certification program for them. And so it's interesting that probably 60% of my clients are IT just in engineering, because their certification program was written by me. So they view me as one of the top trainers that can train IT and engineering recruiters and client development people. Can you teach me how to get into contract? It's interesting you ask that, because many direct firms want to open a contract division. Many contract firms and temp firms want to do direct. I just wrote 2 new tutors. One tutor is how do you add contract staffing, and one tutor is how do you add temporary staffing. Those are going to be in the market probably within 30 days. Like, they're being proofread and loaded into a program, and I want to do videos for those, so I'm not done recording videos. But I will have those 2 tutors, and once you own one of my tutors, any other tutor you invest in, you get at a discounted amount. But I just wrote, because we're getting so many calls from people, how do I get into the contract business? How do I get into the direct business? So I just finished those 2 tutors within the last 30 days. And so I can get that information out to everybody as those are developed. Okay, I don't see any other questions. Let me see if any other hands are raised. Nobody wants to talk to me today. I'm not going to take that personal. I do thank all of you for joining me. I hope that you got information today that will make you more money. And please consider scheduling a demo. It's 30 minutes of your time, and it could change your life. It could change the lives of the people that work for you. And overnight, you could have a comprehensive, consistent training program for not only the people that work for you, but for yourself. You can hire virtual people. You can do whatever you want because this training is web-based. And so, is it worth your time to look at a demo? I think it is, so please write that number down and consider scheduling a demo. So thanks everybody for joining me, and I hope to hear from all of you, and hopefully we'll work together in the future. Thanks so much.